The Scottish Highlands are shaped by mountains and silence. Beneath this vast landscape, older stories endure. Here are 8 haunted places where history still lingers. Carbdale Castle, rising above the Kyle of Sutherland, Carbdale Castle stands in dramatic isolation, its turrets and stone walls overlooking a landscape shaped by windwater and long memory. Built in the early 20th century, the castle has lived several lives from private residence to youth hostel. Yet throughout these changes, stories of unexplained presence have followed it with unsettling consistency. The most frequently reported apparition is known as the White Lady. She is widely believed to be Duchess Mary Caroline Blair, the second wife of the 3rd Duke of Sutherland. According to local tradition, she married the Duke shortly after the death of her first husband. When her second husband later died, she secured a significant inheritance, a detail that has colored how her story is remembered. Her ghost is sometimes referred to as Betty, a name spoken quietly by those familiar with the castle's reputation. Witnesses describe her as a pale, composed figure, moving through corridors and rooms, often appearing calm rather than threatening. Her presence is most often reported on upper floors, where she seems to linger without purpose, as though trapped between roles she once played in life. Carbdale Castle is also said to host other figures. A phantom piper has been reported, his music heard faintly before fading into silence. A warrior carrying a sword has been glimpsed briefly, vanishing as quickly as he appears. Another figure described as a gardener is said to wander the grounds, searching for his lost daughter. This apparition has been most often reported by teenage girls, a detail that has intrigued researchers and skeptics alike. During the years when the building was operated by the Scottish Youth Hostels Association, one room on the top floor gained particular notoriety. Formerly used as a nursery, it became known simply as the Spook Room. Guests spoke of uneasy sleep, unexplained movement, and a persistent feeling of being watched even when the room stood empty. From an educational perspective, Carbdale Castle reflects how relatively modern buildings can quickly accumulate folklore when layered with isolation, dramatic setting, and emotional narrative. The highland landscape itself plays a role amplifying sound and solitude. Today, the castle remains a striking landmark, its history preserved in stone. But when mist rolls in from the water below and the halls fall quiet, some believe Carbdale is never truly empty. And as we leave this lonely stronghold behind, our journey through the Highlands continues toward a quieter hotel on Skye, where one room is said to hold a presence of its own. Greshornish House Hotel, on the northwestern edge of the Isle of Skye, overlooking quiet water and open land, Greshornish House Hotel appears calm and remote. The building stands apart from busy routes shaped by weather and isolation rather than modern disturbance. It is this stillness that forms the backdrop to its quiet and persistent reputation for haunting. Details surrounding the reported activity here are limited, yet that absence has only strengthened the hotel's uneasy character. Rather than dramatic tales passed between generations, the stories connected to Greshornish House are usually shared in hushed tones, often by those who did not expect to experience anything at all. The focus of the reports centers on a particular room, though its number is rarely mentioned. Guests have described an unshakable sense of unease when staying there, often waking suddenly during the night with the feeling that someone else is present. No figure is clearly seen. Instead, the presence is sensed, lingering just beyond sight. Some visitors have reported subtle physical changes within the room. A noticeable drop in temperature, curtains moving when the windows are closed, the sensation of air shifting around the bed, as though someone has passed close by. These moments are brief, leaving behind uncertainty rather than fear. Staff accounts tend to be similarly restrained. Doors have been found open after being secured. Footsteps have been heard in corridors when no one is present. On occasion, guests have spoken of hearing soft movement during the early hours, only to find the hotel entirely quiet moments later. From an educational perspective, hotels in remote highland locations often accumulate folklore through repetition and isolation. Travelers arrive tired, unfamiliar with their surroundings, and sensitive to sound and shadow. Old buildings respond to wind temperature change and settling materials, producing effects that feel deliberate in the absence of explanation. Yet what distinguishes Greshornish House is how often accounts come from people unaware of its reputation. Several guests have reportedly mentioned similar sensations independently, only later learning that the room they stayed in was already known for such experiences. The hotel does not promote these stories. Its purpose remains hospitality, warmth, and rest. Most visitors experience nothing unusual and leave unaware of its reputation. But when the night deepens and sky's silence presses close, some believe that Greshornish House holds more than memories. It holds a presence that prefers not to be seen, felt only in passing. And as we leave this quiet hotel behind, our journey through the Highlands turns toward a far older tower where jealousy, violence, and despair are said to have left a permanent mark on stone and spirit alike. Akagill Tower, rising from the flat coastal land near Akagill Tower, presents a stern and imposing silhouette against the northern sky. Built in the 15th century, this fortified tower house was designed for defense and dominance, a structure shaped by clan conflict and suspicion. It is within this harsh historical context that one of the Highlands' most tragic ghost stories is said to have unfolded. The spirit most closely associated with Akagill Tower is believed to be that of Eilean Donan. According to local tradition, Helen was betrothed to another man when Dugald Keith of Akagill developed a jealous obsession with her. In a violent act driven by possession rather than love, he allegedly raided her family home, killing several of her relatives before imprisoning Helen in an upper room of the tower. Cut off from freedom and hope, Helen is said to have thrown herself from the tower in despair, choosing death over captivity. Her story has endured as a grim reminder of how power and obsession shaped life in Clan Scotland, particularly for women whose choices were often taken from them. Witnesses claim that Helen's presence still lingers within the tower. She has been described as a pale female figure appearing near upper windows or along staircases, her movements slow and deliberate. Some accounts speak of a sensation of overwhelming sadness in certain rooms, as though the walls themselves retain emotional weight. Unlike more dramatic hauntings, activity at Akagill Tower is often subtle. Sudden chills, the feeling of being watched, and unexplained sounds, such as faint footsteps or distant movement, are most commonly reported. These experiences are said to occur more frequently in rooms associated with the upper levels of the building. From an educational perspective, Akagill Tower represents the brutal realities of Highland history. Tower houses were not romantic dwellings, but places of confinement and control. Stories like Eilean Donan's reflect real patterns of violence and imbalance of power that existed within clan society. Skeptics point to the tower's age-thick stone walls and exposure to coastal weather as explanations for unusual sensations and sounds. Wind passing through narrow openings and temperature changes can easily create discomfort and illusion. Yet for many visitors, the emotional atmosphere of Akagill Tower feels distinct. It is not simply fear that lingers, but sorrow bound tightly to place and story. Today, the tower stands restored and respected, its past carefully preserved. But for those who spend time within its walls, the sense remains that Akagill remembers one life lost to jealousy and despair. And as we leave this tower of stone and silence behind our journey through the Highlands, continues toward a small, ruined church where voices from a far bloodier chapter of clan history are said to rise on the wind. Trumpan Church, on the remote Waternish Peninsula of the Isle of Skye, lie the ruins of Trumpan Church, a site where beauty, isolation, and violence converge. Today, little remains beyond broken stone and open ground. Yet the land itself carries a memory so severe that local tradition insists it has never truly faded. In the 16th century, Trumpan Church became the setting for one of the bloodiest episodes in Highland clan history. During a period of bitter rivalry, a raiding party of MacDonalds discovered their enemies, the MacLeods, gathered inside the church for worship. Rather than engage in battle, the attackers set fire to the building, trapping men, women, and children inside. As the flames spread, those who attempted to escape were cut down outside. According to legend, only one man survived, badly wounded, but able to flee across the moor. He raised the alarm, and a retaliatory force of MacLeods soon arrived. The MacDonalds responsible were hunted down and killed in return, leaving the site marked by devastation on both sides. Local folklore holds that on the anniversary of the massacre, the sound of singing can still be heard drifting across the ruins. Witnesses describe it as low and mournful, resembling congregational hymns carried on the wind. The voices are said to rise together, then fade abruptly, leaving the land in deep silence. Unlike many haunted locations, Trumpan Church is not associated with apparitions. There are no figures walking the ruins, no sudden movement or physical disturbance. Instead, the haunting here is auditory and emotional, tied directly to collective loss rather than individual tragedy. From an educational perspective, Trumpan Church stands as a reminder of how deeply clan warfare scarred the Highlands. Religious spaces normally associated with refuge were not spared from violence. Oral tradition preserved these events long before written record, embedding them into the landscape itself. Skeptics suggest natural explanations. Wind moving through uneven stone can produce harmonic tones. Isolation heightens awareness. The mind may interpret natural sound through the lens of known history. These explanations are reasonable and often persuasive. Yet those who have stood alone at Trumpan Church during quiet hours frequently remark on the atmosphere. The ground feels heavy. The silence feels intentional. Today, the ruins are unmarked and open to the elements. Sheep graze nearby. Life continues. But when the anniversary approaches and the air lies still, some believe the voices return, not in anger, but in remembrance. And as we leave this place of collective loss behind, our journey through the Highlands moves inland toward a woodland estate where madness, secrecy, and sudden death are said to linger within a single room. Rothiemurchus, also known as the Dune, set within the ancient pine forests near Aviemore, the Rothiemurchus estate is a place defined by isolation and natural beauty. Towering trees, shifting mist, and deep quiet give the landscape an almost timeless quality. Within this setting stands a house long associated with one of the estate's darkest legends, a story centered not on war or invasion, but on violence within the household itself. Paranormal reports here are said to focus on a single bedroom. According to local tradition, the haunting is linked to the son of a laird who lived on the estate during the 19th century. Accounts describe him as unstable, prone to violent episodes that alarmed both family and servants. During one such episode, he is said to have killed a young servant girl, an act that was quietly concealed to protect the family's reputation. Not long after the killing, the laird's son is believed to have died himself, falling over the banisters during a moment of distress or madness. Whether accident or consequence, his death marked the beginning of the estate's reputation for unease. Witnesses have described strange disturbances within the bedroom most closely associated with the story. Sudden coldness, the sensation of being watched, and the feeling of someone standing close by have all been reported. Some speak of faint movement during the night, as though someone is pacing the room, stopping abruptly when noticed. Unlike many haunted locations, there are few reports of visible apparitions. Instead, the presence is described as oppressive and emotionally charged. Guests often report restless sleep, vivid dreams, and a reluctance to remain in the room for long periods. From an educational perspective, Rothiemurchus reflects how domestic violence and mental illness were often hidden in earlier centuries. Servants were vulnerable, and scandal was carefully suppressed. When stories like these survive, they often do so through folklore rather than formal record. Skeptics point to the psychological effect of isolation combined with the natural sounds of woodland and an old building responding to temperature changes. These explanations are plausible and supported by environmental factors, yet many who stay near the room report a shared experience of discomfort even without knowledge of its history. The feeling is not dramatic, but persistent. Rothiemurchus remains a place of natural wonder, cherished for its forests and wildlife. But within its walls, some believe one room still carries the weight of a crime never properly acknowledged. And as we leave the shadowed trees behind, our journey through the Highlands continues toward a castle standing at the meeting point of loch and mountain, where a headless soldier is said to walk beneath moonlight. Eilean Donan Castle. Standing at the meeting point of three sea lochs, Eilean Donan Castle is one of the most recognizable landmarks in the Highlands. Surrounded by water and mountains, its silhouette has become a symbol of Scotland itself. Yet beneath this romantic image lies a history shaped by warfare, occupation, and loss. The most frequently reported apparition at Eilean Donan is that of a Spanish soldier. He is said to appear carrying his own severed head beneath one arm, his figure silent and composed. This unsettling image is linked to the Jacobite uprising of the early 18th century, when Spanish troops were stationed at the castle in support of the Jacobite cause. In 1719, government forces attacked the castle during the events leading to the Battle of Glenshiel. The garrison was defeated, and many of the Spanish soldiers were killed or captured. Local tradition holds that one such soldier met a particularly violent end, his presence returning as a reminder of a foreign war fought on Highland soil. Witnesses describe the figure as appearing near the battlements or within the inner rooms, often briefly and without warning. There is no sound of movement, no attempt to engage. The soldier simply appears, then fades, leaving behind a noticeable drop in temperature and an oppressive stillness. Another presence associated with the castle is known as Lady Mary. She is said to haunt one of the bedrooms, appearing as a calm female figure dressed in period clothing. Unlike the soldier, her presence is described as gentle rather than disturbing, as though she remains attached to the domestic life once lived within the castle walls. From an educational perspective, Eilean Donan reflects the violent turbulence of Highland history. Castles were not merely homes, but military targets repeatedly destroyed and rebuilt. The trauma of conflict often becomes embedded in places where lives ended abruptly. Skeptics point to the castle's exposed position, thick stone walls, and constant wind as sources of unusual sensations. Echoes, shadows, and temperature shifts are common in such environments. These explanations are sensible and supported by physical evidence. Yet what gives Eilean Donan its lasting reputation is the consistency of reports over time. Visitors from different eras, many unaware of the legends, have described similar experiences in similar locations. Today, the castle is carefully restored and widely visited. Most who pass through notice nothing unusual. But when the locks lie still and the castle empties, some believe its history walks quietly within the stone. And as we leave Eilean Donan behind, our journey through the Highlands turns toward the Isle of Skye once more, where a small hotel is said to host figures who seem reluctant to leave the warmth of the fire. The Lodge Hotel, Isle of Skye. On the outskirts of Edinburgh, along the old road leading toward Dunvegan, the Lodge Hotel sits quietly within the Skye landscape. By day, it offers warmth and rest to travellers crossing the island. By night, particularly when the building grows still, it has become known for a series of encounters that feel domestic rather than dramatic. The reported activity here appears to focus on the ground floor. One of the most frequently mentioned figures is a man dressed entirely in black, often seen standing near the entrance. Witnesses describe him as tall and motionless, as though waiting for someone who never arrives. He does not speak or move when noticed, and disappears moments later without sound. Another presence is that of an elderly woman, sometimes accompanied by a small spaniel. She is often described as seated by the fire, knitting quietly, her movements slow and deliberate. The scene is so ordinary that some guests initially assume she is a living resident, only realizing something is amiss when she vanishes without leaving the room. Behind the bar, a further apparition has been reported. This figure appears as an elderly woman dressed as if ready for bed, her clothing informal and out of place for a public space. Staff who have encountered her describe a moment of confusion rather than fear, as though they have interrupted a private routine. From an educational perspective, inns and hotels in the Highlands were once extensions of the household rather than purely commercial spaces. Families lived, worked, and aged within the same buildings that served travellers. This blending of domestic and public life often shapes the folklore that follows. Skeptics suggest that low lighting, tiredness, and expectation can easily turn familiar figures into fleeting illusions. Reflections, shadows, and old furnishings contribute to misperception, especially in a place designed to feel homely. Yet what distinguishes the Lodge Hotel is the consistency of its figures. They are not threatening or chaotic. They behave as though continuing routines established long ago, attached to warmth, hearth, and shelter rather than place alone. The hotel continues to operate without reference to its reputation. Most guests experience nothing unusual, but those who do often remark that the encounters feel less like hauntings and more like being briefly included in someone else's quiet life. And as we leave the Lodge Hotel behind, our journey through the Highlands reaches its final stop, a harbour town where one restless presence is said to search endlessly for a familiar seat, even as the building around it changes. Broadford Hotel, Isle of Skye. Standing near the harbour road in Broadford, this hotel has long served as a place of rest for travellers arriving on the Isle of Skye. Its rooms, staircases, and communal spaces have witnessed countless brief stays, quiet departures, and forgotten conversations. Within this atmosphere of transience, one particular presence is said to linger, unwilling or unable to move on. The most frequently reported apparition at the Broadford Hotel is described as misty and shadow-like, lacking clear features or form. Witnesses often struggle to define its shape, noting only that it appears as a shifting outline rather than a solid figure. This presence is said to move slowly through communal areas, particularly near seating spaces and stairways. According to local tradition, the figure is searching for its favorite chair. Guests and staff have reported seeing the apparition pause briefly beside certain chairs as though expecting them to be occupied. In some accounts, chairs have been found slightly displaced even when rooms were left undisturbed. These small details have contributed to the belief that the ghost remains attached not to a person but to habit. The same presence is also said to appear on the staircase drifting upward or downward without sound. Those who encounter it often describe a sudden chill and an uneasy awareness of movement just beyond direct vision. The apparition does not approach or interact. It simply passes through, fading into the background of the building. Poltergeist-like activity has also been reported. Objects have been moved or tipped without explanation, particularly late at night when the hotel is quiet. These incidents are not violent or destructive, but they are noticeable enough to cause unease among those present. From an educational perspective, hotels like Broadford are spaces defined by repetition and routine. Furniture remains in place while occupants change. Over time, emotional attachment may shift from people to objects, especially in stories shaped by memory rather than record. Skeptics point to drafts, vibrations, and human error as explanations. Old buildings respond to temperature changes, and tired staff or guests may overlook minor disturbances. These explanations are reasonable and widely accepted. Yet what distinguishes the Broadford Hotel is the consistency of its reports. The same behaviors, the same locations, and the same quiet searching presence appear again and again. The hotel continues to welcome guests, its reputation shared quietly rather than advertised. Most visitors notice nothing unusual, but for those who do, the feeling remains that something here is waiting patiently for a place to sit. And with that final restless presence, our journey through the haunted Highlands comes to an end, leaving us with the sense that some stories remain unfinished even when the doors are closed. These places show how Highland ghost stories grow from lost conflict and memory. They are only a fragment of what lingers here. If you know another haunted location, share it below and join Creepy Experience as more hidden stories slowly emerge.